This chapter provides an overview of program evaluation. It is slightly more academic than the other material that has been presented or will be presented in class. It provides just a bit more background for you, whereas the other material provides more how-tos. The major sections to be covered in this chapter include answering what is program evaluation, providing a brief history of evaluation, defining the characteristics of evaluation. Evaluation research and practice will be covered, as well as who can do evaluations, i.e. you. So what is program evaluation? Well, the authors in this article describe program evaluation as the use of social research procedures to systematically investigate the effectiveness of social intervention programs. Many of you may be taking specific social research type courses that complement what we are doing here in program evaluation. Evaluators use social research methods to study, appraise, and help improve social problems. So inherently there is an interest in quote unquote helping and improving the social problems or issues that are being studied. And evaluators do that first and foremost by diagnosing the social problem. And they also operate on the other end by conceptualizing the design of an intervention, conceptualizing the way that it's actually implemented, or providing guidance on how it is administered, as well as evaluating the outcomes and the efficiency of the program. As you can see on this slide, evaluation has had a fairly recent history, as opposed to maybe some of the other specific subject areas you've studied. It's thought to have studied, and in this chapter they discuss that it was thought to have started in the late 1930s. Ralph Tyler is credited with being the founding father of evaluation, specifically in the field of education, which for many of you who are educators or practitioners within the field of education, you may see that it is a fairly straightforward kind of relationship, as well as would be probably in public health. I know for myself, my training as a teacher and assessment in the classroom has helped me conceptualize evaluation work as well. So if there are folks with the education background, I encourage you to try to draw on some of your previous coursework because it is valuable for this evaluation work as well. Because as you know, you may be evaluating. We know that students are evaluated. Even folks who are parents or who have nieces or nephews can probably relate to the role of assessing. So Tyler used an objectives-oriented approach. First, he stated the behaviors, then the measures, then determined whether the objectives had been attained. Now, in the 1960s, there was Johnson's War on Poverty, and this is considered the, quote, modern phase of program evaluation because it corresponded to this increased investment in social programs to ameliorate social problems. And therefore, shortly after, you had a real need for evaluation of the programs. So the first book on evaluation was written by Schumann in 1967, and it was called Evaluation Research. Now, one of the most noteworthy books was called Experimental and Quasi-Experimental Designs for Research, and that was written by Campbell and Stanley in 1963. Today, and I encourage you folks to click on the link, there is a American Evaluation Association, and the link I provided can also even lead you to a workshop on evaluation this summer. And it is more recent, just policy. It's a professional association that if you are interested in evaluation, you may want to join, and you may want to actually go to some of these conferences and hear the most recent experts and gurus on evaluation. I think it also is a place for networking and job opportunities. So let's look a little bit more closely at the defining characteristics of program evaluation. Program evaluation is the use of social research methods to systematically investigate the effectiveness of social intervention programs in ways that are adapted to their political and organizational environments and designed to inform social action in ways to improve social conditions. This chapter, and you'll see it in the subsequent chapters as well, identifies 5 domains of evaluation. They include needs assessment, theory assessment, implementation assessment, impact assessment, and efficiency assessment. Scriven defines evaluation in your book, or the article, the chapter from the book that some of you may have decided to purchase, refers to him, and he has the definition of the process of determining the merit, worth, and value of things. He's considered, again, one of the giants or gurus in the field, and his definition is one of the most popular and politically correct. So when he talks about determining the merit, he's talking about the intrinsic value of evaluands, or what's being evaluated, as opposed to the extrinsic or system-related value. Then on the other hand, when he talks about determining the worth, he is talking about the value to an institution or collective. By contrast with the intrinsic value, the value by professional standards, or to an individual consumer. There are 4 steps in establishing your program evaluation. So the first is selecting the criteria of merit. The next is to set standards of performance on those criteria. Then you're going to want to gather data pertaining to the evaluant's performance on the criteria relative to the standards. And lastly, you're going to integrate the results into the final value judgment. So, in very broad terms, and that's why I said as well, some of the other materials that you'll have provide even more detailed kind of step-by-step guidance. But here, we're basically just looking at, in the program evaluation, setting the criteria, set the standards of performance on those criteria, gathering the data, and then integrating the results into actually judgments that you will make as the evaluators. And we're going to talk more about the standards and criteria in the subsequent chapters. So a few useful points, and this is a little bit dense, so I'll go through it quickly. Evaluators must balance the competing forces of systematic inquiry and organizational imperatives. In other words, evaluators have to balance doing things, scientifically versus things that they may face within an organization, such as political constraints. You may want to involve stakeholders, of course, for buy in, but you don't want them to be conducting the evaluation, likely. Um, there will be tensions between the evaluator and stakeholders. So it may be best to set up a plan at the beginning where you have their buy in and then you go off on your own. At the same time, though, you may need to change some of that plan based on new information. Again, to that point in the beginning, but you want to be scientific as well as pragmatic in terms of how much you can really accomplish. One thing to keep in mind that I have seen time and time again is stakeholders themselves may disagree, right? So that's important for you as the evaluator, unfortunately, to manage. It may not be your fault, but it is your problem. And you can either, we can look at other ways how you can do that, but maybe through documentation or including other voices, certainly in the evaluation. You need to be concerned for, you have to decide if your evaluation is going to focus just on the stakeholders involved or if you want to be able to generalize the findings. I would probably argue for the former as opposed to the latter, just due to the nature of client work. Um, you also may need to determine how you will increase the utilization of the findings. And you also may want to give attention to the evaluation theory itself or the approach that you are using. So I say that you can do evaluations. I wish that some of this work wasn't so hard in some ways to get into, and I'll get to that point, the fourth point, in a moment. But I do feel pretty strongly that it's not rocket science. Most of it is being systematic and organized and listening to people and reading and learning and then communicating that in a clear way. So, first, you do need to be grounded in social science research techniques. I think this course is a good start. I also think that some of the materials I give you on techniques should be helpful, as well as your other courses. Um, you will need to be familiar just in general with the literature. I don't see it as often that you need to know these theorists. I think even just the handful of folks that we read, and again, even the American Evaluation Association is a good source for you to keep up to date. And even if you subscribe, you can see the most recent things coming out, which I have enjoyed as just speaking personally. You will need to either be a subject matter expert in something like education or public health or the environment, or work with others who are and know how to do that. And lastly, and I think that this is the challenge, is you need to have experience conducting real world evaluations. And so if we can do a good job on these evaluations that you're assigned in class, I think that that can be a very good piece of work for your portfolio to argue for opportunity, not to argue, but to market yourself for future evaluation work. And simultaneously, hopefully, it will be of use for the organizations that you are working in currently.